You're all set. The mics are on.
Okay, well set. Members of council, general public, and I welcome you to the Policy Priorities Agenda meeting for February 20th, 2018, and I declare quorum and call to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda itself, and it's been moved by Councillor Lane that the agenda for the February 20th, 2018 regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adopted as circulated. Any changes, any amendments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Just bring the pen. All right. All right, the first first item under new business is the annual drinking water inspection results. And it's moved by Councillor Kersey that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the Public Works Report annual drinking water inspection results for information. Comments? Any? There's several things that I think that were noted in the report, but we'll start. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to our director. I think overall the report is quite good. There's a number of housekeeping items. One thing that kind of concerned me a bit is that our manuals of operation, if I'm reading this right, are outdated, or were deemed to be outdated, and yet we're hiring an outside consultant to manage this on our behalf. So I'm kind of wondering how that happened, and are we going to bring more oversight to their work so that we don't find ourselves in that, or am I misinterpreting it?
Director?
Hey, Mr. Chair. The consultant that's been hired is for the quality management system, which has an operational plan, which is a different beast than an operation and maintenance manual. That's a manual that's required under our drinking water license. What we've done, we started 2 years ago, is to make them both the same. And then last year, that consultant picked up the plan and polished it up from a quality management system point of view. The inspector reviewed the former operations and maintenance manuals, not the new updated operational plan. So at this point, it's us getting the final cross-references to make sense and actually removing the old operations and maintenance manuals and pulling the remaining material into the plan. So it wasn't in the scope of work for the consultant to do. That was quality management system work, but we've doubled up and saved ourselves a whole ton of paperwork by making one manual that satisfies both. So because the inspector was reviewing the outdated manual and not reviewing the operational plan from that point of view, he found or made the observation that some of the information was outdated. He just needed really to be guided to the right material, but because the group that was leading the audit wasn't aware of this change as well, then we've cleaned that up and it's actually already been fixed.
Thank you for that clarity.
Councillor Kersey, anything further?
I'm fine,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any others? Mr. Barrett?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So we did approve, there is a comment here about the backflow program, and we did approve it in the budget, so that will commence. Any idea of the timing of that, when that program, will it be completed within this calendar year?
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the backflow program budget was approved. The treasurer and I sat down last week and had a review of some of the budgets to see whether we could time our capital projects most efficiently. So backflow won't start until after June 1st. At that time, we'll create the RFP and start the program. So I would hope we would still be very comfortable in coming back before the end of the year to council with a proposed program.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Mayor, anything else?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Hearing none, all in favor of the receipt of the report? Carried. Okay, item 4.2 is facility allocation policy, and it's been moved by Councillor Lane that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the Public Works Report Facility Allocation Policy, and that the Policy and Priorities Committee recommend that the facility allocation policy to Council for approval. Comments or questions? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, there's a number of things that I picked up on. I don't know whether they're just typos or need a little bit of clarity. The first one is with respect to rental contracts. And I'm going to see if I can lay my fingers on the section that's in.
Page 2 of
But
4, right there.
It's speaking specifically with respect to ICE. And I wondered if we're adopting an allocation, facilities allocation policy, that in fact, the reference should be to any utilization of any facility as opposed to specifically to ICE. The policy should be much broader than dealing with one part of the facility.
Okay, Madam Director, can you respond?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, it shouldn't be specific to ICE. Do you have a specific area that you can cite?
I'm just trying to find it here.
It
Permanent
most
holders.
certainly could have been a typo. I can see ICE mentioned under 6C.
At the bottom of 4, yeah, 6C,
C?
yeah.
Yeah, I can see that as well. We can get that corrected. It's not meant to be specific to ICE booking commitments, so we can
So
make sure it's
overall
corrected.
booking of the facility itself?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
These customers, yeah.
Councillor Kersey, next.
Thank you. Item 3D, community youth organizations will be encouraged to utilize early morning and non-prime time hours as well as shared time wherever possible. I'm not quite sure what that means. What is shared time? And so I don't understand that one. Does it need clarity? If we don't understand it, I don't know.
Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can find a way to reword the sentence that's clearer. The spirit behind the statement was to softly encourage the programs or the organizations for community youth to take advantage of some of the, let's say, less appealing or very early hours. Tends to work better with school-age kids, and it was meant to be a soft guideline to try to get that even sharing of prime time hours. If it's not coming across clearly, we can find a way to reword it, bring it back. That's no problem.
The
Councillor
part that
Kersey.
the utilization of early morning and non-prime time, I get. The thing that I didn't quite understand was the shared time wherever possible. What is shared time and how is that layout?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't want to guess. I can hazard a guess if it's to promote activities or your organizations that might be able to be on the ice at the same time. We would promote that, but I can get clarification and
That'd be
make
great.
sure that that's
That would be
written into
helpful.
the policy. Yep.
Councillor Kersey.
Item G, under the same heading, minimum rental times or other restrictions may apply to town facilities, example on statutory holidays. I'm a little bit concerned about that because oftentimes the maximum utilization of town facilities is on stat holidays. So I don't know that we want to impose those sort of restrictions at times when our facilities are probably, vis-a-vis Family Day, for example. Those are times that the facility should be open and utilized, and most likely will have the highest demand for community groups when kids are off school and whatever. So I don't know what my colleagues think of that clause. I'm a little bit concerned about it.
Mr. Mayor.
Can we just hear a little bit more about the rationale? This is, this isn't only for the community center, this is all facilities, right?
Yeah.
So arguably, something could be going on, and just as it was on Monday, in the arena, and somebody wants to book Old Pelham Town Hall at the same time. And so I think,
Yeah.
so can we, that's my understanding when that's, but can we hear from staff, Mr. Chair,
Right.
as to when that clause might be used? Right in
Madam
that.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't comment on that, except that because of the stat holiday and the nature of trying to make this apply to all our facilities, we might want to try to enforce that minimum rental to ensure that we're getting the coverage on those stat holidays. Again, I can get a revised wording if that's not the spirit that council would like to take.
I'll be right back. Councillor
Ladies
Kane?
first.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I almost read this, and I don't know if I'm misunderstanding what Councillor Kersey is saying, but I almost read this in reverse of what I think your understanding is. I'm understanding it to mean that because stat holidays are maximum rental periods, that you may, not that you will, but you may be restricted to only being allowed to rent it for a minimum amount of time. So then that would be in keeping with what the director's saying, that we would be able to then maximize opportunity for more people. So I guess there needs to be clarification.
I think some clarification would help.
Yeah, that would help. Madam Director, is that, can you address that, or would you need more?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's my interpretation, but if you're interpreting that we're trying to minimize the rentals,
Yeah.
that most certainly wouldn't be the case. So we'll make sure we get that
That'd be
clarified. Yep.
Okay, example, Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm thinking that if a facility is rented, you're not going to rent it for an hour or two and bring in people. I think you need a minimum of 8 hours of rental time. I think basically that's it for maximum use, because to call people in on a stat holiday for a 1 hour or 2 hour period is completely useless. So I think if in fact the facility is not used for a substantial amount of time, then probably the restriction would be there. And again, we'll wait for clarification, but that, to me, that makes sense.
Anybody? Councillor Kersey?
On another?
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, were you going to comment on that?
No, it's just the word may
Okay,
as
go
well.
ahead.
It's not punitive, it's
Right,
kind of depending,
Right.
right, on the circumstance, which I think was helpful.
okay, Councillor Kersey, next.
Again, I'm trying not to nitpick here. Number 5C, special events or tournaments receive less than 12 months before a desired date will only be considered if there is an economic, social, cultural benefit of the town. It sounds harsh to me. We're trying to rent our facilities. We want people to, sometimes events come up 3 months ahead of time, and that they come forward and we just say no. So I don't know whether just the wording needs to be softened, that something that it will be given due consideration, and even though we strive for the 12 months so that we can optimize our planning, there needs to be a lot of flexibility there, I think, just given the way things come together.
Good point. Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify then, would the preference to be to take out the piece about if there is an economic, social, or cultural benefit? I'm just trying to understand it. It does leave the flexibility saying that would be at the discretion of the manager of facilities, and tried to get to what the criteria for consideration would be. These are new special events or tournaments that we haven't entertained before, would get slotted in, but would consider those user groups and other commitments we've made first. But
Right,
if there's
I
a
think that's
preferred
fair.
wording,
Yeah,
I just need clarification on what you'd prefer to modify there, and we can do that for sure.
yeah, Councillor Kersey.
Somebody could read that clause and say, well, okay, I missed the 12 months, so now I gotta run through the gamut to get any consideration here. I don't think that's the message we wanna send. We wanna send the message that we're open for business. And while our preference is that 12 months would afford us an opportunity to do optimal planning, if that can't be helped, we're gonna do our best to encourage and encourage the groups to utilize our facilities. That's really the message we want to send with our allocation, giving due consideration to the groups that are already booked. And that's obvious that if we don't have that facility available, then we're not going to push somebody out of the facility to accommodate a new event,
Right.
just because, you know.
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if we said something like, in the first sentence, will be considered based on economic, social, or cultural benefits, so it's
Yeah, positive as opposed to negative.
restricted?
Yep.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that also is respectful to our own sort of attributes that we want to be resilient, we want to adapt. We'll take those that are planning well ahead, but that doesn't mean that those that come to us and then we figure that they fit in, we'll consider them. Okay, good. Councilor Chrissy?
And I guess the last thing, and again, it's a question, if, because some of the allocation falls on the manager of the facilities, if the group or groups are unhappy with the allocation, is there a process of appeal to council? Or is the word of the manager the end-all be-all? And again, I'm asking it for clarity.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of anyone who's challenged the allocation. I don't know whether the director of RCW would have any recollection of that. We can certainly put a protocol into place. I don't know if you want it mentioned at the policy level, or that would be something that would be more procedural related to appeal.
Vicky, I mean, I guess, yeah, in other areas, I mean, is there a process of appeal? If I'm a group and I don't like what you give to me, can they appeal directly to other parts of the organization? I've never heard
Through
of
you,
that.
Mr. Chair, normally, if they're not satisfied with the allocation,
Right,
they do have the option of voicing their opinion, but we haven't gotten to that point over the years. We work with the groups. The groups know that there's only so much time, and it's, as was stated, there is a criteria of who will be allocated first and so forth. So, at the end of the day, if there's no budge, they will be approaching council. But as staff, we work with the user groups to make sure that we can accommodate as much as possible.
okay, Councilor Chrissy?
Well, thank you both for your answer. And I like the fact that encased in the policy is the idea of sitting down with various groups and trying to work it out within the groups. I think that's really good. If we don't incorporate something within the policy, truly, there is no right for a group to come above staff and come to council. I mean, unless council chose to make that happen. So do we want to incorporate it in the policy just for the sake of
Take a shot.
completeness, or we just,
That opens up the door.
it's never happened, but I'm a what if. I've been what if lately. I don't know what's going on.
And Madam Director, and then the CAO, because there's some implications there, precedents. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was just going to say that in comparing other municipalities, they don't have
They don't.
that written in the policy.
I see.
It is a municipal policy, and council will be approving the policy as written, and if you choose to come before council, then at that time you can decide, but normally in area municipalities, they don't have that.
They don't have.
Mr. CAO?
Just to build on what the director said, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that council not include that in there because it just opens the door for them to circumvent administration, period. The second point is that any group that we deal with as administration, if they don't like the answer of administration, the answer is, well, you can always go to council. That is a standard answer for us because council is the ultimate decision maker. So if it ever did get to a point where there was a loggerhead, that group would have the ability, along with anybody else, to come to council and express a concern or complaint that they had. That would be completely up to them.
Okay.
So I would recommend that you don't put that mechanism in this policy.
Fair enough, and my comments were not meant to indicate that our staff's not doing their
No,
job.
no,
or
no,
not
it
doing
wasn't
that.
taken that way.
So, fair enough. I'll ride with that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions about the Mr. Mayor.
Councilor
Oh,
Durley, maybe.
Councilor Durley,
I
sorry.
just wanted, it's probably a typo, Mr. Chair, but it's under policy glossary and terms, community youth organization and community adult. The first bullet says youth is defined as person 3 to 19, and in brackets it's 18. So it just, a very minor thing.
Good point. Good point. We'll make duly noted.
Oh.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I just want to ask about the allocation portion. So it's existing contractual lease agreements, municipal programs, so offered by the town. Then we have youth organizations, adult organizations serving Pelham residents, special events and tournaments, community private rentals, non-resident group. If, it all kind of makes sense, but I didn't know where we might put, let's say, the Lions Club or the Kinsmen. Now, I know the one, let's say the Lions Club. The Lions Club wants to put on an Oktoberfest. Where do they fit in this hierarchy, I'll call it?
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would take a guess that it would be community adult organizations serving Pelham residents.
Okay. Or a special event, but that kind of idea.
Or a special event
Right,
put
so,
on by
so
them, yes.
they'd have to say, you know what, you can use whatever it is, but there is a basketball tournament that's, or there, you know, the facility is gonna be used during the day by Pelham Minor Basketball, or whatever it is, and they wanna go in the gymnasium, or whatever they're gonna do. I don't know, I'm just dreaming something up here, but, okay. So it doesn't preclude service clubs, it doesn't have to say service clubs, it's understood. If someone else wanted to, so somebody from outside wants to put on a tournament, and just like our Silver Stick, right? The Silver Stick tournament that is organized by those dedicated volunteers, they're gonna be in this facility, but they use other facilities. So somebody else doing something like that, would that go under non-resident group, or would that go under special events and tournaments? I guess it'd be tournaments. I guess I'm just wondering about the non-resident group versus, anyways.
Madam Director?
We discussed whether it would be helpful to have examples here. And we can add those examples into the table that lists some of, we can open that up if it fits without getting too suggestive. Generally, we understand this isn't new. It's just a way to better document this
Okay.
allocation. It's being reviewed with all of the user groups. It's already, that's underway. These meetings have happened. There hasn't been any concern about the
Okay.
understanding of that. If someone were really to be arguing whether they're an E versus an F or such, then again, we would sit down with them and try to smooth that out. It's generally to try to lump them into these categories so you can establish a hierarchy.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate the answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my experience in sports, and having dealt with, having sat on the now defunct Sports Council, which was designed to take decisions like this out of council's hands in order to have groups fit together, I found unifying flexibility there. Each group knows their own needs and knows that at a particular point in time, for example, OMHA playoffs, you're going to have a deadline to finish a tournament or a schedule, and the basketball would be the same, and figure skating will have their night and everything. So everybody does work together, and I know that in the past our staff have done an excellent job in communicating all of this to everybody and to coordinating everything. And I think the guideline is here, but every guideline needs flexibility, especially when scheduling sports facilities, and there are going to be other facilities in here. So I have full confidence that our folks will be able to solve any problems that may arise and be able to have the flexibility in there in order to make everybody satisfied, or at least meet everybody's needs, and I have full confidence in that.
Agreed.
That's good.
Agreed.
Thanks, John. Good.
Thank you, Councillor Derby.
Unifying flexibility.
Any other further comments? Notwithstanding some of the changes that we recommended, that hearing none, that we will, staff will be subject to approval. You will bring it back with those changes noted for council approval. Correct? Is that understood? All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Item 4.3, Vacation Policy Update. Policy and Priorities Committee received the Human Resources Report. How might we provide staff with an innovative vacation program that rewards staff while being fiscally responsible for review? And that Policy and Priorities Committee recommends the council approve policy S301-22 vacation. Comments or questions? Councilor Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on the very first page, almost the first line, where it says vacation entitlements accrue at the following rates, and it says here, less than 1 year, you get 1 day for each full month of service. And I question if someone has 11 full months of service, they get an extra day to someone who has 1 year of service. Is that something that someplace down the road might create an issue? I don't know.
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's a great, yeah, you've caught something out, but this is in our policy, so I would just certainly have to go back and make some corrections, so that would have to be an update to the policy as well.
Yeah, good point, because someone 1 year has 12 days, someone with who's got 2 weeks, so, so,
To that point?
go right ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I thought the counselor was talking about the policy itself. It says in the policy, not in the report, but it says in the policy, 1 day for each month of service to a maximum of 10 days. So maybe it's already been solved.
Oh, maybe it's there.
So the report said one part, but the policy says something else.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay, so amendment is.
Mr. Chair, yes, the policy is what's correct, so I apologize when I transfer it over into my
Okay,
concept paper, I
so-
did my default description out.
Duly noted. Okay, so we'll make sure that that's understood. Any other questions about the vacation policy? I know we tried a pilot, and it seems to have worked, right? Is that fair to say? Or maybe you can just comment on that?
Yeah, so again, so it was 2 years that we piloted it, so again, pay grades 10 and up. We rolled out what we called unrestricted vacation, which meant that, take the time that you need when you need it.
Right.
Our feedback after the 2 years, after 1 year was very positive, and after 2 years, the results are still the same. And that people are really feeling that they're not having to count their days, which was a huge plus. People were so worried about being able to save their vacation time for either scheduled vacations or at the Christmas holidays, that they wouldn't take time off throughout the 3 other quarters of the year. So they find themselves getting run down in the January, February, March, April, May, and then taking time in the summer and then at the holidays. We also found that people who were saving their vacation time for the Christmas holidays
Right.
might find that their business got so busy that they were unable to take this time, and therefore we found ourselves in a position of having to pay out unused time. So in a nutshell, if I can make this short, I think I've passed that point though, is just that freedom to be able to take the time when they could. Gave them great stability, made them feel really good. It was great for their mental health. And then, as you can see in the document, it was not abused, that the performance ratings for everybody who was in the pilot, when we rated them last year, were in the successful and up. So performance has been maintained. We calibrated at the end of this year. I'm expecting similar results this year as well. So it's been overall just a great program. So we have hit the rewarding our staff. And again, you can see from the document as well that the fiscally responsible is also there as well, so that unfunded liability has been removed. It also forced us to really look at that unfunded liability for the rest of our staff as
That's
well.
right.
So we've started to make some changes with the rest of our staff.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Director. I think very successful, considering where we were a few years ago. Now people are, I would say, maximizing, utilizing, and I guess adapting their vacation to what their lifestyle, plus at the same time not causing an economic burden to us or to themselves. Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Final report is 4.4, and moved by Councillor King that the Policy and Priorities Committee recommend the council adopt the 2018 user fees and charges, and that the necessary bylaw be prepared at the next regular meeting. Comments or questions? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if the Director of Planning could comment on the changes within her sector. There's a significant number of changes there. Do they reflect a percentage increase across the board? Have you taken a look at the actual costs of operation to do these various services, and that's how you came to the new fees, or?
Mr. Chair, through you,
Yep.
the increase in the fees reflect just a standard increase in terms of the, it's the consumer price index. It's the 1.2% increase from last year to what was being proposed. There was no kind of review or analysis done in terms of tracking time and adjusting that to what it is. It's just a 1.2% increase above the board. And then there were one or two, I think, new fees that we added for services that we do, things like encroachment agreements and zoning compliance letters.
Thank you.
Councillor Kersey?
You wanna, is there anybody else?
Anybody else? No, go ahead.
Okay, I had a question from our Director of Recreation, Culture and Wellness. I'm trying to get to that part. But I was wondering about the gym fees in the new community center. They seem extremely low in terms, when I compare them, say, to rental of the Kinsman room. You know, it just seems excessively low to me for $20 an hour for basketball, or for or for one gym, for the gym, and $10 an hour for half of it. Could somebody comment on that, or?
Okay, Madam Director.
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair. The fees for the community center have been reviewed with RCW and Public Works together. The fees for the room rentals include a cost for setup, since we are now taking on that the event laborers that we talked about, and making sure that there is some cost being recovered for the event setup, takedown, cleanup, wiping down tables, and so on. Those kind of costs aren't incurred necessarily with the gymnasium fees. As well, we have to honor the fees that were agreed to in our license agreements that are already signed and completed. So we had to carry forward fees that have already been agreed to, and then as well for the rental fees that aren't yet committed in agreements, we made sure we were trying to capture the realistic costs related to those rentals.
Councillor Kersey.
I understand respecting the fees that are in our service agreements, or our rental agreements that we signed with local groups. I mean, $20 an hour would probably not cover the cost of hydro and heat and running a mop over the floors. Do we have an alternate fee schedule for people who have not signed service agreement or user agreements? You know, where they've signed a long-term contract for agency or groups outside of the area, that sort of thing. $20 to me is, I think we'll lose money at $20 an hour. I just can't see it. I can see it for a group that's going to use very significant numbers of hours because you make up on the volume, but where somebody comes in to rent it for an hour for $20, it's not even worth opening a gym for $20. That's my opinion anyway. I'd like to hear some comments about that.
You wanna, sorry, you can, I'll pass over to the Director of RCW.
Okay.
Sorry. We did work together on these fees. The $20 fee is comparable to the Board of Education from what they are charging as well. And in fact, when it comes to Pelham Basketball Association, they're paying less than $20, although they have signed with us for a $20 fee. And that was negotiated with them, and they were more than happy to do that. So we can look at the fees again in 2019, half a year.
Yeah. Anybody else? Mr. Mayor?
I just had a question on the planning fee, sorry. There's a demolition here, what was that? $750. Class C, where is it here? I can't find it. Class A, Class B, Class C.
Madam Director?
Mr. Chair, through you,
The new
those are
fee,
the building fees, building permit fees. So it's a demolition
Oh.
permit for a certain class of building.
Okay,
And
So
those were
that's-
the fees that were
that we approved. Okay.
The end of December, so we just rolled them in into this bylaw as well.
Okay, perfect. In terms, I didn't analyze it. Thank you to the director, Mr. Chair. I didn't analyze this perhaps as closely as I could have. So forgive the question in the sense of, so somebody could rent Pelham Town Hall, Old Pelham Town Hall, or they could rent the community center. How do those fees kind of play off each other? They're in the Kinsman Hall or the Accuracy Center multipurpose room.
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. At this time, this is our first draft for 2018, and we know there's going to be some discrepancies because many of the fees for the PCC are new. It was identified, actually, the treasurer came and talked to me about the differences in comparison to, say, Old Pelham Town Hall.
Right.
It's a different demographic, it's a different kind of rental, and yes, there might be some discrepancies on our first, the gymnasium solely is noted as well. It's just to kind of get us in. The ones that were scrutinized the most would be the rental, the room rentals. We probably went over those in the most detail because they tend to have the most direct costs associated with
Right.
cleanup and such. So again, these will be applicable for the 6 months. We're going to review and see what the revenues are like. And at that time, see if there's feedback about discrepancies between the other facilities. There is a policy that when we went through this fee review several years ago, there's a existing policy about making sure recreational rates remain fair and appealing, and so we're trying to be cognizant of that as well. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve here.
Okay.
Okay,
Vicki?
I would just add that you're comparing apples to oranges when you compare Old Pelham Town Hall to the new community center, where the Old Pelham Town Hall, it's unstaffed. The person needs to come here, they're responsible for picking up the key, going there, cleaning, leaving the deposit,
Okay.
returning the key. It's
Right.
like a self-serve.
yep,
So
Been there,
that's
done
why-
that
Yeah,
myself,
I've been there,
yeah.
done that many times.
mopping the
Yeah.
floor, yeah. So, okay, so in the new community center, that won't be the case. Staff are gonna handle that.
Correct.
That would be,
Correct, yes.
I assume that was part of the
Okay,
whole
perfect.
Yep.
bag of goods.
Okay, I appreciate the distinction.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Something's wrong here. It's wrong, it's wrong clock. Moved by Councillor Durley, that this regular committee meeting be adjourned until the next regular committee meeting scheduled for March 5th, 2018, following council All in favor? This meeting is adjourned.
Do we need to sit here for an hour or just to, I don't, it doesn't feel right.
You have to stay.